us, everyone. Jim McMahan, coming from us from Dallas, Texas. And Jim, thanks for being with me here today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Honor and privilege.
No, well, the honor and privilege is all mine right now. As far as this, I told you I were jiving here a little bit in pre-recording here, and letting you know that I've been on I've been doing mortgages here in Northern Arizona in these mountains for close to 14 years. And I made a big change. And it's been it's a lot of work. And I'll tell anyone, like, changing is a lot of work, and that's why I haven't done it. But I'm excited to, so I haven't been really jumping out there on social media and different things. This is going to be kind of a first long form conversation where a lot of people, I'll be connecting with a lot of my clients, a lot of our partners, and letting them know it's the same old Hallows team that is just, some more tools, some more support, and a different team behind us. But I'm excited to have a long form conversation kind of with you today on who you are. There's a lot of reasons why. There's a lot of different banks out there, and there's very, very specific reasons why I chose Benchmark, and why I chose Benchmark for me, and then hopefully for my partners and for my clients, right? I had a lot of people I needed to support in this decision. And so I go ahead and just take it away on let us know who before I give the introduction on, cause I was looking up your LinkedIn bio and everything. I'd like to have you introduce yourself to my clients and partners that'll be watching this, and letting them know who you are and who Benchmark is.
Well, thanks, Chris. I mean, it's a real honor and privilege, love our relationship and how it's gotten started, and very, very excited that you are part of Team Benchmark now. Obviously, you've had an amazing start to your career, and you're already an old pro. But when I look at it from my perspective, I'm starting my 37th year in this crazy business, and as everyone who's listening to this knows, realtor, mortgage banker, teammate on either side of the aisle, we all serve the same end user and client, and this is a crazy 30-day cycle business. So I can tell you with truth and honesty, every 30 days has gone by pretty quick in 36 and a half years. But,
Gosh, yeah.
More in having you and your team. And, at Benchmark, I'll start there. Yes, I'm president, one of the owners of Benchmark Mortgage, and have been here, 15 years, 17 years, including a couple of years consulting my younger partners. When we were getting really this part of Benchmark going in the retail side back in 2008. It's been an amazing run. I think we closed $380 or $400 million that year, and peaked here in the COVID times at a little over $8 billion. But we're a very unique company. We're, I would call, boutique, and yet we are a true full service mortgage banker, and that's important to talk about too. I know that's one of the reasons you really looked at, besides culture and all that too. But today in the world, people saying, "Oh, we fund loans in our name," or "We're a full service banker." Sometimes that doesn't totally take a truth side to it unless you really look hard. Full service mortgage banking means that we can truly keep a loan in our servicing portfolio. You can, as you and your team can get online every day and choose to do a loan that maybe has certain niches or whatever, or has best price, and it might get sold on what's called a flow or best execution basis through our system, but funded with our money. Or you could get on there today and you may have a veteran that got turned down by USAA, or someone that uses a lot of overlays and it meets those true VA guidelines or FHA guidelines, and it needs to be retained, and you can choose that in our world. So there's a lot of cool things about being a full service banker and being Benchmark. But the bigger thing with Benchmark, and what I've certainly endeavored to help create, Chris, is just a mindset of serving families from the standpoint of seeing a mortgage and home ownership as the center of their true wealth development and financial security over time. I sold that way in my originating days for over 20 years. I was very proud, when I helped build my own practice with a great team here in Dallas, Texas. Back in my early days, late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, was one of the first guys to do over 100 million in a year. I'll never forget 426 loans for $101 million in 1998, and broke 50 million in 1992, but did that with building a database and a client for life mindset that we have carried forward in Benchmark. And most all of our branch partners, many of them out there in Arizona and Scottsdale and others around the country, that are real pros that have built their whole world around that same mindset that I certainly tried to help start back in the 80s and 90s. And it's just a true client for life mindset, and what that really means to help not just do a loan and get someone a home, which is important, but to help manage that debt for life. I mean, think about that, because I used to draw on a piece of paper. Now we have it all digitized, but I would show a family that, if you're coming in to borrow $300,000 or whatever the average number is today, you're looking at certainly the cost right now, but over 30 years, that cost is going to turn into a $900,000 $1 million cost over time, especially if you buy 2 or 3 homes over that 30-year period, or, you refinance. And, if we had a mindset to track that and to help a family to really reduce the overall cost of a loan, and look at that from day one and track that for someone, that's a big deal. And more people speak that today than maybe did when I first started it. But it's real here at Benchmark, as you know, and we care. And so that's on the front side, and teams matter, and everybody. You saw this when you came in and kind of interviewed us, and we interviewed you. But you look at one of our stats I'm most proud of when we were doing a little research on how to go forward after COVID. Chris, we got some pros to help us look at all this, and one of the things they measured was our retention rate. And I knew it was really good and really low, but I had not put a metric to it. But we looked last year, and if we went backwards 5 years, we've averaged like a 1.92% turnover rate in our company over 60 months. And I know it was that low before that too. And you think about that with a company that's approaching 1,000 employees, to have less than 20 come and go in a year, including branches. I mean, we have literally no turnover, and such a sticky culture for almost 2 decades, just because of the mindset here, the true respect and love and care for people and for each other that transcends into the marketplace is, I think, immeasurable. And again, in my long career, I had a consulting stint there for about 8 or 9 years, where I got to look at other companies, including your previous company, and helped a lot of folks. I was thankful they helped me too. But I saw it from small, big, medium, big banks, and tried to take all that over time and my experience before Benchmark, and help lead a culture here that's very, very unique and different. We are not only phenomenal on the technology side, on the execution side, but I think probably one of our biggest mantras and one of our biggest successes that you saw, and hopefully your clients will soon, is that stuff does happen in this crazy business, and it's not what happens, it's what we do about what happens that makes all the difference. So that'd be my kind of start out kick in on Benchmark and just myself and what's going on here.
I love it. And it's so easy. And I know as we kick into this, and some people are getting into I embrace the kumbaya of this, but it's so real, right? Like, things are, we see things moving so quick in this world right now that really that human interaction, that service aspect, like when you actually really get taken care of, like and get more than you bargained for, versus like begging and screaming for, the refund on this, that, the other, it is a human business. And I was just shake my camera here for a second, because this was sitting under my tripod where, this is the kind of business I was running. That's a postcard from a client we closed that was dealing with some really hard situations, some needed some strategy over several months to put a plan together. And that's her and her boys that own a home, Wow. So it's that where, the fact that you guys were, there's a lot of companies that you and I talked about that are just growing, and it's profit before people, right? And they can have some cool, they're paying celebrities, or they have some really good marketing teams that can make you think otherwise. But that was one of the things when I was first talking with RJ down in Scottsdale and some of the Benchmark people, that this wasn't hey, let's talk about the programs, the rates, the terms. It's like, do you know about the veteran programs we do, the boot and shoot? Do you know about the loans we can do for veterans, that if it just doesn't meet the guys, but we believe in that person, we believe in this loan, that it's going to come together. So I'm curious, how did you, so that, and the veteran culture seems really, really big. And I do have here, it's on my show and tell here between my postcard, and I did get some jackets printed with the Benchmark Never Quit. I'm really excited for that. Excited to come down to your veteran event next month. How did you guys, I'm super excited for that. But how did you guys get into that? Was that always part of you? Is that part of your family? Was it always part of your career? Or, where's that veteran piece come in?
Question. Yeah. In total transparency, again, the mindset with myself, with the key players of Benchmark in the beginning of all this certainly have had a heart to serve everybody and serve others, and are very patriotic and God, family, country. I mean, just all those things. We've lived it, but it's one thing to say you do, and then to really make that extra effort without any mindset of a get back, just to give, right? And so it came about as we were building, this retail side of Benchmark over these last decade and a half. We had some really key people come into our lives early on, Stuart and I, and go way back when we David Faraday, who the golf guy, was a good friend of one of my good buddies, Bob Bodine, and Stu is a very hard charger and creative guy, as you've gotten to know, and he met David at an event that we'd gone to together with my buddy Bob. And I'd met David several times because he used to come to these before he started doing the show on the Golf Channel, but he was always the commentator on the Masters, and he had a real heart for veterans, and Stu perked up on that. And about that same time, we had a guy come into our company who was our Blue Jacket winner last year and has been with us quite a while now, since 2010, Andrew Paul, but in his former life was Lieutenant Commander Andrew Paul, SEAL Team 3. And it was just amazing because he was banging the gong early in 2010 and 11 about just how we needed to really go serve our veterans. And there was a huge need. And there is today, as you'll see at Boot Shoot this year, but it was different than just we were in the war. There was a lot going on, a lot of people coming back without limbs, and then their mind and the brain treatment thing was just being kind of found. And it was just an amazing, God-given blessing of how that went down with Andrew and a guy named Chad Fleming, who now works for us, former Captain Chad Fleming. I don't know if you're ever a former, but three-time Purple Heart recipient, and he came kind of through that the original thing with David Faraday, and just all this came together. Andrew connected us, with Marcus Luttrell, and then Chris Kyle was still living at that time. He had served under Andrew, and that was a blessing. Chris was our first speaker at our 2012 event. I mean, unfortunately, he was killed at a ranch near ours. A year later, such a tragedy became an amazing marching direction for us that we honored Chris and his family that next year. And out of it came this whole system of honor. We chose to honor families and honor individuals every year at Benchmark, and we will again this year. And that really caught on in this Special Forces community, and then extended out to the greater, military and veteran community. And then we were able to even reach into the first responder community with the tragedy several years ago here in Dallas of the almost assassinating shooting of 6 officers downtown Dallas. We honored those families, and then got involved with the Texas Troopers Association. So it's been amazing where that's gone. And it's just been from a real heart of giving, not expecting anything in return. It really wasn't even based around business in the beginning. It kind of has turned into some of that, almost just kind of reciprocity, and that we want to serve. We really want to serve that community. I mean, the biggest part of our servicing portfolio for a while there was veteran loans. And that's a big deal too, if you really want to get into it. I mean, that didn't happen by accident. We went back and literally retooled and did training with our underwriters, our mindset with our branches several years ago, when we really saw how underserved and how uneducated that pillar and vertical within the industry is. And it's not that we just want to be known only as a VA lender, but we definitely want to be known for having a heart for veterans and for this country, and for the miseducation of that piece of the business, because it kind of lends to all parts of the business. And so that's really how it happened in a quick nutshell. But yeah, I would strongly urge people to check it out, on the website for bootshoot.com or Benchmark site. We've got some of the videos on there. You'll experience it this year yourself. It's absolutely a spiritual awakening of patriotism. Governor Rick Perry, our former governor of Texas, called it several years ago the most patriotic day in the state of Texas. And he got involved. Wow. Glenn Beck got involved through him. It's incredible what it's become. So much bigger than us. And so we just try to facilitate and keep that going, because we've been able to raise, somewhere between $6 and $7 million now over the years, 11 or 12 years of this. And primarily for Brain Treatment Foundation. Even though the war technically is over, even though there's so many other things going on around the world, skirmishes and special forces things that happen that we do behind the scenes as a country that we sort of hear about and know about, the brain treatment stuff is still bigger than ever. The suicide rate is tragically way too high in this country with veterans. And we'll be highlighting some stories this year on April 13th that happened in the past few weeks, Chris. It's tragic. What some of the stories that you'll hear come out of some veterans we knew that took their life this past year. And it just hurts me to even talk about it. But so, yeah, it's a big, big deal. And we're thankful as a company we get to pour into that. Whether markets are phenomenal like a couple years ago to horrible like the last 6 to 8 or 10 months, we still have stuck with that commitment. And we'll see it through this year, and it's going to be special. It really, really is. So thanks for asking about that.
Yeah, no, and it's what's exciting about it is it seems like it's a big rallying cry for that bleeds into a united vision and culture of everyone we talk to just seems all about it. And just like you, whether you had family that served or whether you just know people that you care about and come to that connection, we're excited. We're excited to experience that firsthand for sure. And that was one of the other. Yeah. So one more quick thing on Benchmark here before and then I'm really excited to have, owner and president of a Moore's company here on the podcast to talk about more client facing on a lot of things that we're facing there, and challenges for the everyday home buyer or potential investor and so forth. But, and I guess I'm curious more from a standpoint. So maybe let's get deep on this here, Jim. That you, when I was making jokes, I was seeing, I was cleaning out a drawer and found like a 1999 DVD of yours on the buyer consultation. And I was, we were working to get this. I've been just so busy on getting everything set up with the new, with our new digs here that I didn't dig it out. So I wish I had that here.
Show it, with my dark brown hair. I mean, today it's kind of a wet look, but
yeah, exactly. So, but it seems like the care for people has been something that you're very passionate about, right? That it's never been, at least the Kool-Aid that of the Jim McMahan brand and the Benchmark brand has not been about, hey, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Here's your loan. We're going to be the lowest rate leader or anything of that nature of just cutthroat kind of, that it's been about people, that it's been about caring. And that shows when, when I've, and even now that I'm connecting more and more with everyone in a working relationship versus just kind of interview basis relationship, that people are excited, that people care about their job, whether they're an underwriter, a closer, an IT. Like I just got off the line with IT and spent 45 minutes pulling wires out, plugging wires in, and it was like a pleasant, fun conversation. Right. And so, what created that for you? What's in your background? What's in your past that created that care for people?
Well, I mean, number one, the key is where, yes, I did some things on my own, and I say on my own, I mean, with a team from a production standpoint that were pretty phenomenal in my early days and in my origination career. I also learned, the truth of collaboration and of finding like-minded professionals that really care. And then transcending that, and then standing for higher values and higher standards and not compromising. So many companies build and serve kind of their high-end production people, but then they have a lot of mediocrity in the middle. Well, you get in markets like now, and that will literally take a company down, as we have seen all over the place. I mean, today, I think I mentioned earlier, but Homebridge Financial, it's public news. It was public this morning, was acquired by CMG. Well, getting acquired means, hey, we're broke and we need help. I'm just being blunt. And our cash burn is too much. We're gonna go off the cliff. Dozens and dozens of companies have happened. This has happened to now in the last 6 to 8 months. And so all that to say, we have to run a great business, and you run a great business by having great partners and people that think alike. And as I like to say, sweat the same. And we built a system and a model around that. Another, secret, I think, to our success. Years ago, there was a book by Stephen Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's a really professional selling book and still a great, book today. And it had 3 kind of times in a professional salesperson's life and career. One was the dependent stage, where you're dependent on someone else from a big part of the early part of your career, finding out what everything is. What's a 1003? What does this mean? What do you do? How do you do it? And then here comes the independent phase, which many people spend their whole career in. Independence is when you find that stride and you can do well on your own and you can do business and you're with a company that can support you. And again, people go from good to pretty good to great in the independent phase. But the lucky few that kind of have a bigger mindset and keep pushing forward and have a servant-hearted mindset, I've found, tend to find that interdependent stage that Stephen Covey talked about. And I think that's what we've done at Benchmark. And that is the phenomenon where you as a talented individual end up finding and surrounding yourself with a handful of other super talented individuals that are different than you, have different strengths, different weaknesses, but a similar heart. And all of a sudden you get that together and poof, there's a Benchmark, where you have no turnover and you have people that are here for a long, long time and make, multi zillions of loans and help a lot of people and do well financially and serve their communities. It's that kind of story. So I definitely, from a personal standpoint, you're asking me, I definitely sought that kind of mindset. I sought mentors early on, and my mom was a big push on this. She'll love watching this and hearing the old story, but I still have a journal somewhere up here on my shelf from when I was 19 years old. She made me go to a seminar in Austin, Texas. The guy named Jim Rohn. A lot of people still follow him today. He's passed away now, but he's an amazing guy. He was Tony Robbins' mentor. Tony Robbins was the number one sales guy under Jim Rohn way back when he started his career. And Rohn is amazing. And I actually got to meet him several times and took a lot of notes and built my sales career around that original journal of a very servant-hearted mindset, bringing huge value. The whole client for life thing kind of came out of that. Rohn was a master at that and teaching salespeople. A guy named Dennis Waitley, Zig Ziglar. My first job out of college was actually working for Ziglar for a short time. And then got to go to his Sunday school class for like 15 years. So
nice.
My mindset came from that combination of mentors. I met Todd Duncan in 1992. We partnered in 93 for years, as you may know, on some different products. My original 90-day burn, and so again, a product called Business by Design, and different things over the years. But all that stuff came into my part of Benchmark, with just a huge proliferation of that shared mindset, like we just talked about when Stuart and I met in 2006, and I did a little consulting gig. But here was this now, dream younger brother, 14 years younger than me, that had a super creative mindset and very passionate, bull in a china closet. I was kind of the more calmer guy. And then Brian McKinney over here, who used to be our payroll guy at CTX Mortgage and now our CEO, and he'd gone off in between and gotten his MBA. And Steve Remington, current president of the Texas Mortgage Bankers Association. We're real proud of him and that. And Steve's been a rock at Benchmark the longest of all of us, I think 19th or 20th year now. So he was with Stuart and Brian way back. But it's just fun, the team we built. I love to say, I think the T-shirt should be, it's good to be us, because, you really get tested in times like now, as you've seen, being someone newer on the team here, but getting to know, me and others that you've kind of known of or been around over the years. We have something very special. Imagine being a mortgage company where you're invitation only. We really don't go out and try to recruit the masses. That was kind of from my leadership mindset. I built a $100 million mortgage practice, as I called it, around fewer of the right people, a mindset of, Jim Rohn used to say it. I've heard several great thought leaders say this, but, become more valuable to fewer of the right people that agree with your mindset and your market opinion, versus suffering the tragedy of serving the masses. And a lot of people end up serving the masses and get crushed and get caught up in just transaction or price versus value over time. And that's a real phenomenon. We have proven it. I'd like to say we are not on trial. We work hard, to do what we do and to execute. There's the emotional, passionate side that we're talking about. There's the tech side. We've got on that collaboration team. There's so many more names I didn't mention. You came out to visit, and look at 10 or 12 department leaders you met with. I mean, everybody in totally different mindsets and personalities, but similar mindset on the way we serve, the way we think. So many creative, great leaders in our appraisal department and our tech department. I mean, look at our tech stuff, with John. We measure everything, right? And like, you can go on our website today, and I think we're averaging, from the time you get a clear to close email that you're sending out to your realtors and your borrower, we're averaging like 3.9 or 4 hours from the time you get the the email to docs at title. Half the
Wow.
time people are calling going, "Hey, can you wait on docs? We're going to hold it for 10 days.
It's a
It's
good problem to
okay."
have. Yeah.
But we were doing, even during COVID. I mean, maybe we got to 24. I remember one time one of our branch partners called me and goes, "Hey, my docs took like 34 hours." I'm like, "Are you joking?" Like, we're like, the most loans have ever been in a system in the nation. And you remember 2020, 2021, it was
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm a numbers nut, so I can rattle off all this stuff. But, there's roughly $14 trillion in any given time right now in mortgages outstanding in the United States. Homeownership's obviously a big deal. And at one point, like 50% of that was in line to get refinanced back in 2020, 2021. So, and yet we were still maintaining amazing turn times and doc prep times and stuff, but it got stretched. But all that to say, the mindset here is different. The
Yeah.
way we serve is different and unique. I think one of the things within our company is, I'll say this as one of the leaders and kind of the growth guy, we have a no Neanderthal policy. And you know what I mean by that? Because I've been around a lot of
Yeah.
producers just like
Yeah.
you have in our industry. And sometimes some can have a mindset of, oh, it's all about me, because my clients are so important. Well, it's all about all of us in this company. And all of our clients are a top end clients. And so we've built a model to serve them all the same in a very, very high end, high touch, high tech way.
Yeah. And I mean, I know it's a bit of a cliche saying, but it definitely, with me, it really embodies that, big enough to serve you, but small enough to care. And that's where, like, in small markets like ours, that's definitely, like, I had another client, who was texting me. He's like, "Are they going to have the same small town feel?" And I was like, "Oh, that's good to know." Like, when I first moved to Flagstaff, it's like 70,000 people, right? And it was kind of small for me, but I'm like, "Oh, we don't want it any bigger right now." So it's kind of this, when you come and visit, you'll see it's a little hilarious that there's like a little bit of this anti-Phoenix, anti-California vibe, more so, not from a, just more so from a, like, a lot of folks will come up here and sled and leave all their plastic sleds here because they don't need them down in the desert, right? It's just like this, we have this little protected community, that it's a tough, we have a lot of challenges in that, kind of going in the real estate vein, that where do you shut the door, right? That you want to love on people and everyone should have a fair, equal opportunity at having their little, place in the woods here in Flagstaff, Arizona. But we're Forest Service surrounded, and things are tricky. We're one of the top 3 most expensive real estate areas in the state of Arizona, and there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of challenges in affordability. I think our average sales price, and it's been fluctuating a little bit in market. So one of my realtor partners is going to give me crap for not knowing this off the top of my head and being the numbers guy like you are. But it's somewhere in the $600,000 to $700,000 range, right? Which for a lot of folks is tough, is really, really tough. So maybe jumping in and segueing into kind of the challenges ahead in the industry. And I'd be curious to see kind of, what are your thoughts? What are your forecasts? Where do you think in the road goes ahead for both the real estate and mortgage industry right now?
Well, so to this point, I mean, great dialogue on just benchmark mindset, where we've been, history, present, and then of course passion for veterans. So to get specific on the today market now and recent past, because you got to talk about that. I mean, this is a Fed cycle, as we all know. And then what's coming, I'm going to speak from experience. I used to do seminars on this stuff, on just more of the inflation. I did, a whole history of rates thing for years with Barry Habib on the road, and Summit Mastery, on the Reagan years and history of rates, I called it. And there's still a graph floating around that I created a long time ago. That was a 200-year graph where I went and authenticated the information through through UBS Warburg, one of my early financial mentors. He helped me gather all the treasury data back to 1796 under Alexander Hamilton, who's one of my world-class heroes. In fact, I just went and saw Hamilton for the 3rd time with my wife on my birthday here a couple weeks ago in New York. But
happy birthday!
So I'm a nut on the market and the history of the market, and then the truth of the market, and just the freedom of the market in America, and how homeownership works and interest rates. And I've always tried to bring that to my client, to our company. And this one's a doozy, Chris. I'll tell you. I think somebody asked me not long ago, have you ever been through something like this before? And I'm like, yep, actually I have. Uh, and, this, I think it's my seventh cycle in my 36 and a half year career.
Wow.
So I definitely have some experience. This one's different. They're all different. This is like we've had a mild recession already, really. Our industry obviously has had a real recession. A recession is, by any economic definition, all the way back to any textbook to the 1950s, a recession is 2 negative growth quarters in a row. In the overall economy, well, you can have a recession within a sub-economy or within an industry. And our industry has had a recession this past year for sure. We've had 2 negative growth quarters late last year. But all that to say, a couple observations. The Fed, no one could have dreamed how much money they poured into the markets during COVID. If you look when inflation actually did start going up, which was May of 2021, it had its first good tick up. And you look on any of the graphs we use on Keeping Current Matters, if you want to pull any of that stuff up, our partnership with Steve Harney and David Childers is incredible. But and I'm, by the way, doing a national Zoom call for us the third week of March. You'll see that announced here soon with David Childers. And we'll show some of these graphs that you want your people to be on. You can share it with all your realtors. But anyway, when inflation started to tick in May of 21, you had Yellen and people in this current world of the Fed say, oh, inflation is going to be transitory. And I'm like, I don't think it is. I mean, when you put that much money and you're buying $80 billion a week in some weeks in mortgage-backed securities and treasuries to stimulate this economy, obviously to stimulate the services industry. I get what we did and why. And the free money phenomenon, even before COVID, was pretty phenomenal. And then when we went to where we went, you basically had the government from May of 2021 all the way till they finally started tightening, in April of 2022. They basically were doing a call it a 2-1 buy down or a buy down for the world every week. It was crazy. I mean, that's why rates stayed so low so long, because you had inflation going up every month from May 21 forward. And yet, the rates, as you know, I looked it up the other day, on March 29th, you still last year could have got a 3 3/4, depending on FICO score, 3 7/8 with no points and basically no fees on a 30-year fixed. On January 5th last year, 2022, you were at 3 1/4. And so even into March and April, my point is the Fed was still buying bonds. It was crazy with inflation. Pretty straight up for 9 months. So we were so behind the curve, the Fed has had to take way firmer action and stronger action. They're doing a good job, but it's kicking our butt as an industry. And every time we've started to have a little rally, look at January and February, even here at Benchmark, if we could have taken January and laid it into 2022, it would have been our 5th best month last year. And that came apart to, number one, we're adding great partners like yourself, and we have an amazing team already. But it's also because rates, took a little dip back down into the high 5s, low 6s there, with what the market thought was going to be the Fed's going to be signaling soon they'd be done. And rates rallied. And this is a huge point for consumers listening to this, or realtor partners that don't understand completely the complexity of the interest rate market. Just because the Fed has tightened and they raise the Fed funds rate, it doesn't mean that mortgage rates rise exactly the same. Mortgage rates usually rise in anticipation of the Fed. And then once the Fed's done, mortgage rates will actually cycle down. So they've tried to rally 2 or 3 times now in the last few months and have been swinging within a literally 100 to 150 basis point range on rate. We peaked at 7.5 with perfect credit back in November, kind of retesting that now into the low 7s. In the past 2 weeks, crazy volatility. Great news is you're in the final quarter of the Fed tightening cycle. They're going to talk a very tough game because any rally in the market is inflationary, but inflation is coming down. It peaked at 11.3%. Hard to believe that kind of double-digit number last summer. Most recent numbers are around 6. People say, oh, these last 2 inflation numbers were bad or worsening. They weren't bad. They weren't worsening. They just weren't coming down as fast as everyone would like to see. Wage inflation is still sticky. The economy is super strong underneath all this, which is not a bad thing. And I want to get to that in a minute about the current real estate market and how the silver lining in all this for us that have been able to survive and be prepared to thrive again. But the Fed isn't done, but they're almost done. And they know that. And the marketplace knows that. We've basically suffered through, but worked through the fastest tightening cycle, fastest rise in interest rates in any 180-day period in the history of recorded rates. So congratulations, I guess.
Yeah. No,
Listen, incredible.
and that's one of the big things that I think people need to understand. That I am full of empathy, right? Full of empathy to the first-time home buyer and to everyone to know that no, we're not dealing with things that are categorically in themselves unique. The speed, though, right? The carpet has been moving fast underneath their feet right now.
Yep. And look, I mean, rents have gone through the roof too because of that inflation. Those are finally starting to top. And that's what the Fed looks for in these metrics is so many things like the next between now, when this goes out in the next 30 days, and there'll be two big inflation metrics, actually three that will come out. The jobs number comes out this Friday. These are probably the most important of this 12-month cycle, honestly, right now, because we're at that critical point where we're probably going to continue to see a slight trickle down. The Fed will tighten again for sure at their next meeting, a quarter for sure. Now they're saying maybe it's a half to just get done sooner. We'll see. The good news is even the Fed chairman's testimony today and yesterday in front of Congress and the Senate, by being vigilant and strong, it's actually like the 10-year Treasury is holding around 4%. And yet, think about this. It broke 4 back in November and hit 4.3 as a peak, then rallied all the way back to 3.5, 3.6, as we talked about a few weeks ago. Now it's back to 4, but it's at 4 when the Fed has tightened 175 basis points since it was last at 4.3. And that's the confusing part. I hate to professionally confuse our customers and our friends, but it's a confusing phenomenon. The mortgage-backed security market trades separately, usually in the same direction over time as the Fed funds rate that the Fed controls and treasuries. But it will break sooner to the downside, and that's what it keeps trying to do once the Fed is done. Because once inflation is coming down, and even though the Fed keeps saying we want to get it 2% or lower, that is a target rate. That's good. They need to stick with the same target rate, not be all over the board like decades ago when we got in so much trouble in the 70s and 80s. But bottom line is, if they get this below 4, I mean, that's they just want to see that and take that deep sigh of relief, which is not probably that far away, maybe summer. It may take a year or so to get, the target rate really all the way back to 2, but the mortgage market will move ahead of that. I mean, we could easily see rates back into the mid to high 5s by summer with the Fed out of the way with the right inflation data. And it's likely coming. I feel like it is. I'm looking at the tea leaves that I look at from years of experience. And the bond market will lead you. They say the Fed leads you, but really the bond market leads you, and the Fed watches closely to that. Because even if you look at Chairman Powell's words back in the fall, they don't know. They know a lot more than us, but they don't know until they know. In other words, until they see the data, until they see the numbers. That's why they're what they call data dependent right now. But we are in the final innings of this Fed cycle. These higher rates are going to have a chilling effect on the economy enough to get inflation down. I mean, look at commodity prices. Lumber prices have come down 80% from their peak over a year ago. Cement prices are still sticky, but a lot of things have come down. Oil and gas prices. I mean, natural gas alone has come down 70% from its peak. So those are real things that go into that inflation number. Inflation is a trailing 9-month average, and that's what's wrong with it sometimes is you're not getting a forward look, you're getting a backward look. But this too shall pass. We tell people, I know you tell clients, marry the house, not the rate. Because the last thing I want to say, Chris, this is really, really important. And this is a fact, and I like to deal in facts. If you look at the foundational fact right now of the residential real estate market in America, we are in the strongest position we have ever been in, ever. And that's a big deal. I'm saying that from a 37-year career guy that's seen a lot of cycles. And where I come from that is, this is an article I put out to the company, I think back in September. Both Bloomberg and CNBC had it that month. But it's an article that showed that if you took the value of residential real estate, even after the market kind of had turned down and flattened a little bit in prices from the crazy multiple offers, last spring and the late fall of 2021, we're at about a 48 to 50% loan to value national average. Think about that in the residential real estate market. It's the lowest ever. And this because of the proliferation of so many cash buyers the last 3 years. Like we've never seen anything like it in the marketplace. That's waned some now, but it's still, the point is Another amazing stat, get this one. Just under 70% of all homeowners that have a mortgage in America are at 3.75 or less. And you may say, oh, well, they're not going to move then. No, a lot of them aren't going to move. But guess what? That's a really good thing. It's a really good thing because those loans are not going to default. If the economy does get a little tougher later this year with the Fed putting pressure and maybe pushing us into an overall mild recession, the residential real estate market is going to be resilient because of these facts that I'm telling you. And that's why every time rates even sink down into that kind of fair low sixes, high fives mindset, which is really a great rate over time, we're not going back to the threes.
Yeah.
That was a government bought down phenomenon that happened from COVID and through the end of COVID and coming out of this cycle. But to be in the fives, oh my gosh! I mean, that's well below the past 30-year average of low sevens, high sixes. And so, the residential real estate market, to summarize that, move to the next question, is phenomenal. I think consumers need to look today. It is a great time to buy real estate. Think of the 25 people that were all making offers on a home March of just last year, 2022, and then having the first-time home buyer, and they needed to get an extra 15 or 20 or 25 grand from grandma and grandpa or mom and dad just to be ready to pay more than asking price. At least that's subsided now. There's still a little bit of it here and there in pockets of the market, but prices have moderated. Look at home builders. I mean, we deal with a lot of home builders, as you know, in our company, and so we get a lot of neat intel and inside information. I mean, I've been down at our corporate facility or corporate retreat at our ranch 5 of the last 7 weekends with builders, and all of them repriced back in the fall, took the hit maybe on homes they had higher costs in, but they know they're making it up on new homes. They repriced a lot of thousands of canceled contracts, right? But they literally have been selling all of them as specs. Everything is being sold, and it's selling to that customer that was frustrated. They went 0-15 on a house over a year and a half of searching. Now they go buy this new home. They're getting an incentive, a discount, and a decent rate or a 2-1 buy down, or all the creative things that we're doing on our side of the fence. So it's good times, but it's challenging times. And this is why consumers and great referral partners need world-class advice from mortgage professionals like yourself and our team.
No, and it is. So I'm curious on a couple. So I had a couple questions pop in my mind as we're tracking through it, and I think, it's something where it's one of the main points of me creating this additional platform or podcast to get information out there, because I run into people daily that say, I'm waiting for the bubble to burst, or I'm waiting for this or waiting for that. And it's just, for people to understand, I think really just 3 critical key factors of, like you said, that folks are not in a need case basis to sell. They're in some of the lowest interest rates and some of the highest equity ever. Right. And number 2 is that the inventory is very tight, historically tight. Right? There's not a ton of houses out there. And the last piece that there is, like we're seeing when we see all of a sudden rates just dip a little bit into the 6s and 5s in January, and market activity picks up, right? So I think we have this sideline full of pent up demand that as soon as rates get into what they consider reasonable or get within their striking point, it's going to be a little competitive out there is my concern. Are you kind of thinking the same thing?
I am. But again, remember, there is a huge constriction in our industry right now. And in the real estate industry, I mean, tens of thousands of realtors didn't renew their license this year. I saw some stat the other day. It was like, wow. Jaw dropping.
Yeah.
In our industry, I'm going to use a name. I mean, Finance of America, this is one example of our industry this past year and how many people have gotten out and not getting back in. That was a company that is completely gone now. It was totally owned by Blackstone, huge multi-$100 billion hedge fund out of New York. Those guys come and go and get in the mortgage space, as you and I both know. They got in a decade or so ago. They partnered with Bill Dallas, another, they acquired quite a few companies, West Coast, Midwest, mostly Southwest too. Built up to 11, 12, 13,000 employee company. I mean, they were Ritz-Carlton, cool company, a lot of money backing. I knew a lot of my old CTX colleagues were there. And then, they start like a hedge fund does. Hey, we're going to get out. We doubled or tripled our money. It's an every 7 to 10 year cycle. They sell to guaranteed rate back in March. Here comes summer of 2022, margin compression, volumes dropping, people are falling out. The wholesale component of the deal falls apart. Then the retail starts to fall apart. And, you think, well, then, okay, Blackstone's going to stay in the game and find a new home. They just told other people, hey, October 28th, still the date. Good luck with that. Have a good life. And I literally watched the CFO of Blackstone like the week after. It was like early November on CNBC. And I'm just watching to see if he was going to say anything about the mortgage space. He didn't even utter a word about it. He talked about their oil and gas investments and all their other places they were printing kabillions. And that was like a gnat on a donkey's butt, for them. And that's what's so amazing is just poof, all those people are gone. Some of them found new homes. Some of them got out of the business. And just story after story of the constriction in our industry. Although painful, it's healthy for you and I, who are long-term players, who do have the true client for life mindset. And yes, it'll be competitive, but competitive with fewer of the right people. And again, it's a time, I always say, go wide when you're in tough markets, go deep when you're in rich markets, or going wider. Look, you joined, we're adding, fewer of the right people again at Benchmark with really quality pedigrees and mindsets and right fit, so that, look at the resources we have that, you can go take in your marketplace. We don't really go try to saturate a marketplace. It's more of a right fit with the right leader, which obviously, you are. I'm very excited about you and your team and what you're doing and have done. And that's how we think. And I guess I could summarize that for this, because there's a lot of salespeople listening. One of the things I've learned in my sales career is to assess daily, weekly, monthly, look at your disciplines, but then control that which you can control, Chris. And, like the good book says, pray about all the things you can't. But so many people get stuck worrying about all the things they can't. And it dominates their life and can just own their brain, and you end up crashing in the wall, versus really controlling that which you can control, which is who you do business with, how you do business, the message that you have in the marketplace, having an opinion that's based on market fact. A big deal of mine that I did for years in my own career. When I did create that graph I was talking about earlier, and all the stuff to educate clients on cycles, because this is a cycle. You will see lower rates. You will maybe see softening in prices, but I don't know that it'll be a lot more, just because of the foundation. You've already had softening in prices. If you look at the reality of the froth has been knocked off. Now the Fed would like to knock a little more froth off of it, just because the market's so quick to rebound right now, because of lack of inventory and stuff. But I think they're getting there. This Fed cycle will end, sooner than later. We're in the final innings, like I said, and there's a huge opportunity. So a big message there is, if I was a homeowner today and I wanted to buy, I would go buy. I would be discerning in the choice. Get creative with a professional like yourself and your team on, is there a 2-1 buy down? Is there a way to have the seller contribute? That's been a great way to sell real estate, as you know, is helping realtor partners right now with listings on getting the seller to, like, in other words, don't go do a price reduction if you're still priced from last year's numbers, or do a partial reduction and throw the rest into a buyer incentive. I mean, you'll sell a house like that. Even if rates are at 7, go create a rate at 5 for a year with a 2-1 buy down. Chris can show you how. And that's a big deal. That helps that budget, and somebody's income's going up over time, and they can always restructure, refinance, and that's part of your tracking system and ours, and helping clients do that. So there's just so many cool things. I get excited about it because entrepreneurship is the key to the backbone of this marketplace in this country.
And I just think it's like one of those things that, people don't understand. We aren't taught markets in school, right? And we come from the psychology of, if you walk into, or you click on Amazon or walk into Best Buy or something, you're not going to want to pay above a sticker price, or you're not going to want to have a negotiation haggle, right? And we're trained as human beings to see a discount, right? It's marked down, right? That's what we're used to. That's how we as humans consume most of our goods. And so when it comes to markets and cycle, and people get so caught up, like you said, in overthinking and getting nervous, one of my favorite questions is just to say, hey, are you selling this in 2 to 3 years? If you're selling in 2 to 3 years, then don't even talk, let's not even talk about this. Right. But I'm pretty sure despite daily market volatility, people that bought Apple, 30 years ago or Amazon, they're pretty happy they did that then. Right. And I need to look this up. Next time we chat, Jim, I'll be a better numbers guru here. But the stat I saw was something of like in Arizona, from like 1990s till now, it's like a 400% appreciation for real estate.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, if you really want to day trade your real estate and worry about it going up a little bit or going down a little bit. And I know that and I want to be sensitive and have empathy to, $10,000 up or down, it can impact some budgets, and it's real. Right. And so there is a struggle there, but at the end of the day too, is just knowing that, in 10, 15 years from now, what that real estate's going to do is not down, down here. Yeah.
I'm going to repeat a term I said earlier to echo that's brilliant advice. Total cost analysis. My good friend Dave Savage, I was kind of part of that push back in 1994, 95 when he started Mortgage Coach. I used to be the guy in the box. Same picture on that 1999 CD you have or whatever. But
yeah, exactly.
That was the whole push. I mean, Dave was a loan officer and had the passion for creating that kind of illustrative approach to the total cost of a loan over time, and then the total value and wealth creation over time. That's why one of the key reasons of our great country is the truth of an ownership society, and why we have the highest home ownership rate in the world. And it will continue. And even though prices may rise and fall, and we may have a little bit more moderation in price, I don't think it'll be much, just because so much of the froth got knocked out already from last year. In 2021, it's homeownership over time is the key for a family. It's the key for taxes and ownership and just all those things you just talked about. And prices will fluctuate, yes, but over time they're going to go up, and cost of living goes up, incomes go up. Wages have pretty much kept pace. I mean, this inflation, that's why the Fed wants to bring inflation down. You can't have wages rise at 11% a year. I mean, they need to stay at that 2 to 3% moderation range. But all that to say, that's the magic of owning, because you do get to control that piece of the pie, and it's worth it no matter what. If there's so many illustrations out there, but you buy a house today for $450,000 or whatever the number may be, or in your market 5, and it drops 5% or 3%. Okay, just look over time. I mean, the forecasts are 3 and 4 and 6 and 7% rises to come in 3 to 4 years goes by like that. And if worst case you're even or slightly ahead, even you're ahead because of tax deduction, because of stability and home ownership for your family. But then over time, I can tell you, as a homeowner who, I came out of college in the early 80s, got crushed in the mid 80s with the recession there, found the mortgage business in 86, lost money on my first house. But probably shouldn't have sold it. Should have kept it as a rental. Didn't know well enough back then. But,
Sure.
But then over time, the point is, it's all worked out pretty good. You just have to see the reality of over time ownership matters. The marketplace matters, and so your advice is huge. I can't go enough.
Yeah, and coming back to what you're saying on what you can control, and that's one of the things that I do tell people is that where you stand to lose or make the most amount of money is being able to predict your own behaviors, right? And I think when people are thinking, "Hey, we're going to buy this home," and then I hear from them a year, I always share, this one was a little bit extreme example where I had some clients, they moved into town, bought the kind of hey, we don't know the area too well, but we want to buy. So we'll buy this, in this neighborhood in the area. And then the next year they wanted to move up. So they loved it here. They wanted to move up. And so it was kind of fast, but they sold, moved. And then in the third, year 3, they just had to get back to family in Tucson. And so they ended up selling. And I was like, guys, I love you. And my kids' college funds are definitely doing better because of you, but you got to quit doing this. It's not, between transactional costs and appreciation did okay for them. But I'm like, you got to predict your behavior. Right. And that's, like you said, that's something you can control. We can't control markets, but if you can predict your behavior and you have some staying power, some stability, like you said, and even if you move, do you turn it to a rental? I think that's maybe the biggest piece right now for people to understand. You got to get deep. You got to go deep. There is affordability. It's just a matter of where you are. And I think that's maybe a message to my own market is I hope people and I know people make it happen here, and it's tough, and they call it, I don't know. Yeah, I learned this one like 10 years in, right? I've been here about 14 years, and there's a saying in Flagstaff that's called poverty with a view, right? Because we have these beautiful mountains, and it's just, we got the Grand Canyon 2 hours away, Lake Powell 2 hours away. We have Sedona 45 minutes away. We just have this amazing natural playground. But people have to make a sacrifice if they want to be close to town in a 10, 15-minute commute. That's where even just getting from, when I came to visit you guys, and just getting from the airport to the office is like an hour. And it's like, we have something really special here, but I think a lot of people are just going to have to know, do you really want to make it happen here? And let's buckle up and, bite the bullet, sacrifice a little bit now to make it happen, and the long-term will pay out. Or is this just not the market for you? And you need to probably go find that market sooner than later, because it's appreciating somewhere.
Yeah. Huge advice. That's right. Huge advice. And again, this is sort of, you picked your poison, right? Because again, I look back at the year last year when so many people were so frustrated and couldn't even get in line for a home. And now, we're back to a more moderation in price. Rates are up. You got to just be creative and get with a pro. But again, marry the house, not the rate.
Yeah. Do you have any other, before I ask kind of a concluding question here, I do want to ask you here, and I'm a market guy. I'm not a speculator, Jim. I'm not a speculator, but I'm going to ask somewhat of a speculating question here. So I think, hey, rates, hopefully once we start to see these inflation numbers come down, these are something I've talked to a lot with my partners. We eat, sleep, and breathe, KCM, MBS highway type of stuff. And thinking, hey, hopefully by the end of second quarter, we're back in the fives. I've heard some predictions that we might get back into the maybe fours by the end of the year. Not so much because that's where things need to go, just by seeing, hey, in the 70s, 90s, where the rates came down after inflationary periods, and that there could be this little amateur night moment of, I was watching some David Stevens, the former head of FHA, and he was saying, I loved how he just said, the Fed never does this right. Not like, hey, the Fed just doesn't do this sometimes. No, they've never done it right, where they've not, they weren't tightening fast enough, and now they will likely over tighten. So do you think that there's maybe this amateur night moment? Not that people should bank on this, but more so on that refi basis, that because they may over tighten, because we're heading into, potentially more economic, maybe recession and conditions because of that over tightening, or just in conjunction with where the economy is going. And who knows, maybe election cycle plays into it. But do you see that that's probably, or maybe 2024 is maybe the lowest rates, like the last train before we really get to a sustainable normal? Because 7's not normal, 3 is not normal.
Yeah, great question. So, and there's multiple scenarios. You get guests like this,
sure,
or whatever every day that take the one or two. So I'll give you probably two scenarios. Because the one, first, you're right. I mean, the Fed tends to always overdo it, and they were very late to this one, very late, and that's why they went so aggressive, 4 3/4 tightenings in a row and all that stuff. And there was 3 in a row. There was 4, because there was a quarter, a half, and then 3 3/4. Well, that's 4 3/4 if you add them up. But bottom line, very aggressive. That has a definitely a slow effect. It's slow to get there, but then also when it gets there, like you're seeing it now, just this past month, first signs of a few defaults in the car loan side and that kind of thing. And honestly, that's the Fed wants to crack the back a little bit right now to push this inflation down more. So, bottom line though, they're going to win. Don't fight the Fed is the old adage. And with that truth of they're going to win, meaning they're going to crack the back and slow this marketplace, rates are going to be lower at some point. There's no doubt about it. The range will be, I'm betting more of that high 5s to mid 5s. That's what we were about to get to when the market was trying to correct here back to normal and be ahead of the Fed. And let me back up and say it this way real quick too. Early last year, jump back to April, the Fed was just tightening for the first time, 1/4 point. And then that second tightening was 1/2 point. And mortgage rates had moved well over 100 basis points. Remember, like whoosh, they were way above the Fed. Well, same thing coming down. And that's why they, again, have tried to rally 2 or 3 times, and the Fed has talked them right back off the cliff for the moment. But there'll come a point here, just like right now with the 10-year Treasury sticking around 4, where if the bond market really thought that we're going to have a serious re-inflation problem, 10-year Treasury would be over 5 right now. I guarantee you it would, but it's not. And so you're already getting those signals in the market. So, I guess my answer in the crystal ball I have is most likely the Fed, yes, will over tighten. They may wait a little bit too long, and that they'll just hold rates where they are. And then the other big one you have to understand is there's a thing called quantitative easing, QE, and then there's quantitative tightening, QT. So you're hearing a lot of QT right now. Quantitative tightening is when they're done with this tightening cycle in the next really 60 to 90 days, they're going to keep cleaning up their balance sheet and either letting bonds expire that they bought over the last several years or selling them into the marketplace, which brings more supply, which can be, keep rates a little higher than maybe you had hoped. But still, they moderate. So that's why I think more you're going to see rates settle into the high 5s, low 6s first. If they got to 4s next year or even end of the year, which is possible, that's one of the scenarios. So that scenario is going to be more of a hard landing. That's going to be more of, oops, we crushed this industry a little too hard. We hurt that industry a little bit too much, too many layoffs here. Whatever industry it is, service, selling, or travel, manufacturing, because they're pushing hard. Meta just announced more layoffs yesterday. Facebook of several thousands. Amazon laid off thousands. The Fed wants that right now. They're waiting for these companies to push and take away their COVID whoosh up hiring and put those folks back out there and let them filter back in the marketplace. It sounds harsh, but that's what they're doing to get inflation down. So the scenario you have there of going to the 4s would be if we had the hard landing and we did have a little bit more of a moderate recession by the end of the year. Yep, you're going to get mid-4s on rates and possibly then an easing. Some are forecasting that by the end of the year or first of next year. I think that's worst case. I think more moderate case.
Absolutely.
Fed stops, rates moderate. We live in a range because everything's range bound. Stocks are range bound. Everything gets in ranges, right? And trading ranges, and bonds keep trying to move to that trading range. It's going to be more of a 10-year Treasury in the 3.5 to 4, 3.25 to 4, which gets us in a mid 5s to high 5s, low 6s interest rate environment for the great credit borrower, and then the rest of the story. That's
and once we can get to like that normal spread, right? Because we're not in a normal spread to the Treasury right now, right?
Right at all, because the aggregators know
just the volatility.
You can explain that one to your client, but
exactly.
For instance, VA loans for a long time didn't even have a par price, and people were so frustrated. Well, they know a VA IRRRL is so easy to do a refinance, and so they weren't going to pay us premiums, knowing a year from now those things are all going to likely get refinanced over. So that you'll see moderate first. That was starting to happen a few weeks ago, and it's very likely that the head fake we're seeing in this quickly rise in rates, we could get it right back in the next 4 to 6 weeks, Chris.
And it's kind of a difficult thing to explain to clients that it's a good sign that rates are so expensive right now because everyone's betting on a refi cycle. Everyone.
Yeah. True.
So
just be patient and listen to good advisors like yourself.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Jim. Well, we've taken up enough of your time today. Any other last bits of advice to the realtor or home buyer out there trying to make things work in this market?
Yeah, I mean, the first one would be build a great team, get great advice. The most important thing you can do is get outside of your own opinion, and if you're going to have an opinion, build an opinion based on fact and based around true professionals. I hate to use a morbid example, but if you found out you had cancer today, you're probably not going to do your own research and just try to figure it all out in a medical book or on doctor.com.
Facebook.
And see true professionals, and you're probably going to get one opinion. You look at a benchmark, you look at a Chris and team, benchmark, Flagstaff, et cetera, and you all have already done that for the customer. You've built this team of professionals, with the realtor, with the builder, with tax professionals, with financial professionals in your years. And that's the key to just not only owning a home, but building a foundational real estate, wealth, model for your family and for your long and short-term financial plan. So that is my advice: is stick to that mindset, get great advice, develop an opinion based on real market professionals, which this amazing team that you have, Chris, at Benchmark is. So congratulations, and we're excited about our partnership.
Awesome, Jim. Yeah, we're excited about it, and I'm sure there'll be more conversations to come. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.